everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Faz.
And I'm Story Rich.
Are you?
No.
Oh, right, okay. No. You've been telling me a little bit about your last couple of weeks.
The stories.
I normally like to start off and say, how was your weekend or week been, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, that's fine. Be like staring really close into a furnace. Don't worry about it. No. It's fine.
I will tell you that at the weekend I got a Metal Gear Solid 5 Collector's Edition guide off eBay for about £8 posted. I was pretty chuffed with that.
Nice.
And it's really cool, really weighty. And I sat down on Saturday night and I was like, I'm going to have a little read through, because in here they've got a story recap at the back of the whole of the saga, which is brilliant. And it's really good because it is it's not just written from these are the facts situation. It's as if someone, I wouldn't say necessarily the best person in the entire world, but as if someone has written almost like an exam level essay, if you will, trying to explain
dissertation.
Yeah, I remember memories of me writing about Tomorrow Never Dies for my GCSEs or whatever, as an essay. Anyway, and it's pretty good. But then the funniest thing happened the next morning, and you spoke about this on the podcast a long time ago, where you know how a video game thing happens when you go into a room. So, for example, if there's a light on in a room, you go to that room. Yeah. And that's learned from video games. So when you come down the stairs at 6 o'clock in the morning and your child's tablet is sat in the middle of the hallway playing video games, like is in music and everything, and you're just walking down and this empty hallway has this thing going on, my Metal Gear Solid reflexes really kicked off then. Fully expected to get speared by a solid snake. So it's just really weird. I'd just been reading about it the night before, and then I genuinely had the brink, the exclamation mark moment.
You didn't have to squeeze past any cardboard boxes or anything,
No, not that I noticed.
That was the point.
Yeah. But from an unruly 3-year-old leaving me traps to unruly 2-year-olds having a birthday of a podcast.
Hey.
Congratulations.
Well done, I guess.
Yeah, to us, which is weird. But yes, that's our second birthday, just gone this weekend. And we are celebrating with a sexy spreadsheet.
Oh, is there any other way to celebrate?
But I'm genuinely really excited about this. This is one of these ideas that I've had that actually I think it is the most arbitrary of ideas, which I love, of course.
Yeah.
And yet, it's different because it doesn't mean a single fucking thing. But actually,
the world will keep spinning.
I think it might be quite fun because it's ridiculous.
It is.
So we have chosen for our second birthday, as a treat to ourselves, to do a bit of a comparison, a this or that, if you will, between PlayStation 1 games and N64 games. Now, the idea sprung to my head because you've always said that you were an N64 kind of guy when you were younger, and I was a PS1 kind of guy when I was younger. And I thought, well, it'd be really cool to kind of do a bit of a bit of a comparison. And I thought, well, it's probably a bit rote to go, which is the best console? So I thought, how can we do a comparison? Top 25 games on an IGN article for PlayStation 1 and top 25 games on an IGN article for N64. Mush them together, but rather than doing which is the better list and which are the better games, just literally do a position for position, random elimination. Look, basically, that is in. Yep. So you are just whichever game you are, it is just potluck which other game you come up against in the other list. And we're going to make a decision on which one we think stays and goes, whether we played it or not.
Cool.
So I think that's is that well enough explained?
I think that's basically about right. Yeah.
So over the next hour, we're going to try and get through all 25 games in both lists and have a bit of a comparison. So we've made a sexy spreadsheet where we've said if we've played it, and also we've put the IGN rating on there as well. So I did a little bit of work. I dug into every single individual rating for each of these games to find out what IGN actually thought of them, and then they put them in the top 25 games. So to be fair to them, the numbers seem to, when I look at them, they seem to stack up for what you would expect to be the top 25 games on each of their respective consoles. There is one outlier which we'll get to in a while, which I was like, what? How is that in there? And it's on the N64 list. So, brief little bit then. PlayStation came out in 1994 in Japan in December, I think it was. And that was around till March 2000. And I say when it's around, it was obviously around after that, but that's when the PlayStation 2 was released. The N64, fun. I always forget this. It's almost, it's a year and a half later, So before that got released, and then that was up until September 2001 when the GameCube came out. So similar sort of lifespans. Mm-hmm. I think the N64 has a bit more kick to it, I believe. Which is just what I've read before, that I think had a bit more power behind it. But obviously, there's the flip side of the fact that the PlayStation played CDs, and the N64 played cartridges as well. So there might be a bit of a sort of, comparison between those. But in general, the games, when you start looking at them, they're all sort of 8 and 9s out of 10s on these lists of what IGN have said they are. So let's see how we get on with them, and it's going to be. People will get pissed off, probably. They'll listen to this and go, well, you've never played that before, or I can't believe you're picking this one over that one. We're just trying to have a bit of fun. Like, if you do get angry about it, fair enough. You could be like Rich for his last 2 weeks at work, you'd be angry. Okay, so let's start.
Right.
25, Parappa the Rapper on the PS1.
Yep.
9 out of 10. Banjo-Tooie on the N64, 9.4 out of 10. I've played Parappa the Rapper. Nobody has played Banjo-Tooie. Really annoyingly, because we're going to do a rare replay podcast in about 2 months' time, and that is on there, and I will have played Banjo-Tooie a little bit, probably in the next week, maybe. But at the moment, we don't have a comparison between those.
Yeah.
You do like Banjo-Kazooie.
I do like Banjo-Kazooie.
And from my understanding of Banjo-Tooie is that it's just, Tooie of Kazooie.
Yeah, I get the impression it's kind of more of the same, which I fully expect that comment to age like a fine milk, because someone on the internet will correct me. And I've just realised, this is a pretty handy one to start with, actually. On the spreadsheet, I've not marked it as me playing Parappa the Rapper, but I have, only very briefly.
Okay.
So I figured, in my head, when I was going through marking what ones I had and hadn't played, I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to leave out the ones that I have played, but only a little bit.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because I don't want to be sitting here pretending like I know it all.
Well, that's it. This isn't what this is about. We're not going to be like, oh, we've played this. Is read an article about it or whatever. Genuinely, I've never touched Banjo, Kazooie, or Tooie before. I would love to in the future at some point. But yeah, there's no point in pretending about it. But what do you think?
Well, I think for me, while I haven't marked Parappa the Rapper as being something that I've played, I have bought it before now. I've got it on my PS4 somewhere and played it for the first, a couple of tracks that you can get through. And then I got to the market and just absolutely
the frog.
Ruined the frog.
No, he's a dick.
Whereas,
great song though.
I have had ample opportunity in a similar time frame to play Banjo-Tooie and never have full stop.
That's true.
So I think for me, Parappa the Rapper gets it just by dint of the fact that I did actually pick it up at one point.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. I mean, again, it's hard when you haven't played the other game, but I genuinely, I'm thinking from the other side of things, I think that I'll probably never play Parappa the Rapper again. Whereas I'm more likely to play Banjo-Tooie at some point and
actually give it a chance because you haven't.
Genuinely, I do think that will be within the next month. Whether that's an entire game or not, I doubt it, because we're trying to look at it from a rare replay point of view. I want to get rid of Parappa the Rapper. I think he is a bastard.
Well, I like Banjo-Kazooie. Banjo-Tooie, let's assume more of the same. And Parappa the Rapper, I did literally play 2 tracks of it and put it down. So Banjo-Tooie gets it?
Yeah, Banjo-Tooie's going into whatever room that he's allowed to go into, and Parappa the Rapper's, eliminated from the world,
deleted, gone forever.
Deleted. Yeah, I see. Look, it was so different. I've ticked mine. You've really scored out Parappa the Rapper.
It does not exist anymore.
Okay, so let's move on quickly then. Position 24, Oddworld: Abe's Odyssey. 7.5 in IGN. Actually, I think that might be the lowest on the list. Versus Pokemon Stadium 2 at 7.5.
It's kind of weird they're both in that spot.
Yeah. This is what you'll I mean, certainly when I sat down and read this and started reading up the list, like more and more I was like, oh, that's weird. And it kind of had, there's a couple of times where a game comes up against another game and you go, that's so weird because they match each other so well. Like, it's
almost like maybe they had a formula or something.
Well, yeah, and then I thought maybe no one in the world's ever done this before because they're not fucking idiots, basically.
We're having some kind of like weird Da Vinci Code kind of moment where like we're going to uncover some kind of awful secret because we've compared two lists.
So, I have never played Abe's Odyssey. Again, people, no, you idiot. Right, okay. That's what I imagine is going on right now at home. Pokemon Stadium 2, though, I put yes. And the reason is because I've played a significant amount of Pokemon Stadium 2, even though I didn't have an N64 when I was younger. And that was because there's a chap down the road who I live near, and he had that, and I would always go around to his house to play that. And I also used to, and I've got a really good memory of, they used to have like these things. So, you now have card shops everywhere, basically. You can go and play card games, Magic the Gathering, etc. And you didn't really used to have that as much. You used to have your Warhammer shops and things, but we used to go to the local Burger King to trade our Pokemon cards when that was like, and it was called a Pokemon night, and loads of people would flock down, and all you could afford in Burger King was like small chips. But there would be tons of people there trading cards and things. But they'd also put Pokemon Stadium on as well, and I used to love going down there and playing Pokemon Stadium because I didn't have the N64, so therefore, like, it was a really special experience for me to be going and trading all Pokemon cards, and getting done over with a bad Dragonite one time, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. But also playing Pokemon Stadium, and specifically Pokemon Stadium 2 as well. So I've got really fond memories of that. I've zero memories of Abe's Odyssey, apart from the fact that it's obviously a well-known PlayStation 1 and PlayStation in general, I would say, like, is in series, and lots of people love it, and the tone of it and the characters from it, I think, but it's just never really necessarily appeared to me.
I mean, for my part, I think Abe's Odyssey I probably have played once or twice on a demo.
Yeah, it'll be one of those things that's on every demo ever.
Yeah, and I just, like, for me personally, and I completely see why somebody would like the kind of cinematic platforming kind of thing that it kind of goes for, but I just wasn't a huge fan of the setting or even the animation. Like, it kind of looked like claymation to me, and I've just never really like gelled with it.
Because they've re-released it a couple of times and added things to it, I think, haven't they? So, and I've still never been compelled to pick it up.
No, and I get why it would be beloved, but it's just never grabbed me. Whereas, and I was checking the list to see if Pokemon Stadium 1 popped up on it. It doesn't look like it does. Spoiler alert.
I'm planning to go back and play either 1 or 2 at some point, hopefully, over the next the sort of months, I think, really. And I might go back to 2 based on this, because when I was reading about it, it's got a lot more features to it.
Yeah, when I was looking
second gen as well.
When I was looking at building up a bit of an N64 collection again, I did toy with picking it up, but I think it's quite expensive, at least in PAL regions. But Pokemon Stadium 1, I friggin' loved that game. I played the absolute whatses out of it. And I think it was probably one of, if not the first time that I had that ability to play a Game Boy game on a big screen, which I appreciate you could do on a Super Nintendo, but I never had one. But even just being able to transfer your team from the Game Boy game to like 3D was fucking mind-blowing. So I think Pokemon Stadium 2 gets the nod from me.
Yeah, I think that's probably an easy one for us both there. So Pokemon Stadium 2 is the 24th best game out of these 2 lists. So in at 23, Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, 9.1, versus Blast Core, 9 out of 10. So you've played Blast Core, and I have played Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. So this is a good one. This is a head-to-head then. We get to bat for our team now. Do you want to go with Blast Core, another rare game?
It is rare. It's also probably, like, when I was saying about putting yes, I've played it versus not, this is probably right on that cusp of, like, have I played enough to feel like I could confidently say, I enjoyed this game or not.
I trust your integrity. You wouldn't have put a Y in that box if you didn't,
Well, exactly.
If you didn't fucking mean it.
But yeah, I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
I it's a reasonably recent pickup for me. So I do have the cartridge floating around because it was one of those ones that I never really played back in the day, but I'd always kind of been curious about it. But it just never really got re-released on anything that I could play it on. And finally got round to it after years of remembering. I had this like N64 magazine VHS tape, like a cover mounted one, back in the day, and I remember 2 games from it. There was Blast Corps and there was Doom 64. And a year or 2 ago, I finally got around to playing Doom 64. And I was like, right, that's off the VHS list. And then, Blast Corps was the other one. I was like, right, I'm doing the VHS list of 2. It is basically a puzzle game in which, this kind of this transport truck carrying nukes is just driving forward to get to a set destination, and you just have to clear a path for it using various combinations of ridiculous vehicles. And it's the kind of formula that has been jazzed up and re-released since, as kind of destruction technology in games gets better. They've kind of tapped into that. It's the kind of framework that lends itself well to something like that. And for just going in and just causing havoc and going for high scores and kind of knockabout arcadey fun, I really enjoy it. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Fair enough. For Crash 3, to see that this in the list is interesting because I'm not sure that it's necessarily my favourite Crash, but at the same time, that you get to the point where this is the fun Crash out of the 3. Like, as in, this is the one I could do when I was younger, basically. Crash 1 and 2 were like quite difficult for me at the age I was when it came out, and I remember my uncle having Crash 3 on his PlayStation. I was thinking, I think he had 1 and 3, and I don't think I'd ever really played 2 till later on. I remember just sort of thinking, I can actually do this one a bit. It's still fucking hard, that is it. But the levels are just like so much more varied, and it feels like the Mario-fication of Crash almost, and you just get a lot more. And so when it came back out on the remastered version, I played Warped first because it was the one I had the fondest memories of, I think. But I don't necessarily think it's the best Crash Bandicoot game, although it's still very, very good. I'm happy to bend to your will here with Blast Corps. If if you're cool with that, that was less of a fight than you probably wanted it to be. But
not so much you wanted it to be. I feel like I'm robbing you somehow.
No, it's okay. Well, it's fine. Well, N64 down. It's 3 now out of 3 for the N64.
Strong start.
Well, it might level out. It will. It's just about to be fair. So as far as I'm concerned, Spider-Man in at 22 on the PlayStation, 9 out of 10 from Activision, and Space Station Silicon Valley, which is 9.5 on the N64. One of the highest scores. And you've played that, and I'd never heard of it until I read the article, and I still the 35 words that were written about it. I still had no fucking clue what was going on. So. Go for it. Tell me a little bit more about,
Right. So if anybody has ever listened to this podcast and gone, you know what, like this idiot that's always saying about like if you find someone who talks about these things whose views kind of generally gel with your own, and you kind of think, okay, well maybe I would pick that up, or maybe that does sound interesting. I kind of see where they're going with this. Space Station Silicon Valley is probably top of that list of. If you saw a checklist of what it involves, you'd be like, that'll be a game that Rich likes. It's fucking weird. It's got insane graphics. It's basically a proto Grand Theft Auto. Pretty sure it was DMA and co putting it together anyway. You ultimately play as this tiny little microchip that's sort of having to yank itself out of a crashed ship on said space station. And you basically... take over the bodies of these robot animals, and they all have different skills and abilities, and you basically use them to complete objectives and get from point A to B in these dinky little levels. So like you might have can't remember much of the animals specifically, but as an example, you might have like, I don't know, a mouse that goes really, really quickly, or like a rocket dog, or a sheep that kind of has this big I don't know, a wobbly jump or something like that. It's those sorts of things. You are basically just trying to get through the space station, complete these levels, and I can't remember much of the plot beyond that, if I'm being honest. But frankly, it doesn't need it.
I need to not listen to you because it's convincing me how good this game
is. It's utterly fucking balmy in a brilliant, brilliant way. And, you know, like, you'd look at something like the Katamari games and go, that is a quintessentially Japanese game. This is the kind of thing that you look at and go, that is, like, your proper, like, quirky British Jeff Mintery kind of, like, could it have been made anywhere else? Yes, probably. Have I got who made it and where they made it wrong? Probably again. But
it feels like.
It's the vibe, you know? It feels like one of those last proper, like, quirky British games until you fast forward to, like, thank goodness you're here. And that kind of vibe, it is off the wall. And just, I would love to see what I guess it would be Rockstar nowadays thinking about it. What they would do with like a modern version of it.
Is it DMA Design?
I'm pretty sure it is. So if I remember right.
Yeah, so they are British then. Yeah. So
Dundee or something.
Yeah. Oh man, that's really tough because I'm just like, I can see why that's a 9.5 now. That sounds like, it's funny because that sounds like such my bag now. But
yeah, well that's the thing. Like, I think it would be a lot of people's bag, but it's just never seen the light of day since, which I think is a real shame. It is one of those games that you'd give to like Night Dive Studios or something like that, get them to spruce it up a little bit, do a couple of little quality of life improvements, sell it at a kind of budget price on some digital storefronts. Away you go. And like, I think more people would get into it.
Does it defeat the best Marvel superhero?
It does that one. I think by the time you get into Spider-Man 2,
well, that's it.
That would be a different story for me.
Like Spider-Man, like, isn't so. This was like, and it's really funny. I was going to say this previously. Sorry, that you look at the actual release dates that I put on the spreadsheet as well, and you look at when the all of these games were released for their consoles, and nearly all of them come from 97 to 2000. Now, if you think the PlayStation...
What a time to be alive.
If you think the PlayStation came out in 1990, well, the end of 1994, that is in... I don't know if there's anything here that actually... There's one game from 1990... or two games from 1996 that is in, so... whereas, and everything else... certainly, there's only a few really from 96, 97. It become 98, 99, 2000. And this felt like this Spider-Man came out in just the sweet spot of, and again, the reason I sort of said about Activision sort of being involved in things like that, this felt like the Tony Hawk's of Spider-Man. Like, and I just remember having so much fun on this game. Like, as in, and to see, I guess, effectively, probably one, well, almost in a way an open world, but not really. But how they managed to make that work, and for the first time ever to feel. I am doing something spectacular with this controller in my hands. Like, I am controlling Spider-Man, and it feels really good. Like, they do a really good job of it. I think, like you said, the only thing not going for that now is that there are, as there is with the movies, as there is with the games, there are other Spider-Men now that kind of then you're going to go, well, is this one worth going back to? Am I ever going to go back and play the Spider-Man? No. Whereas... I genuinely might go and play Space Station Silicon Valley from your description of it. So the N64 is romping at the moment. But we cannot be untrue to ourselves here. I need to do a better job of helping out with the PlayStation a little bit. I'm not sure it's going to get much better here because this is in at 21. Mega Man Legends 2, a game neither of us has played, from the year 2000, 8.1, versus Beetle Adventure Racing from 1999, 9.1, a game neither of us have played.
So Beetle Adventure Racing, I rented once when I was a kid.
That's enough for me. Tell me.
You race in beetles, as in the VW variety.
Okay, yeah.
That's all I can remember.
So it's like a tie-in, is it? Like, as in...
not quite.
I guess it's licensed, though. So,
yeah, it's definitely licensed. I don't remember it being terrible, which, for a racing game on the N64, is actually kind of weirdly high praise. It's not exactly blessed with many of them. So
hitting your spreadsheet there.
I have seen various other lists where Beetle Adventure Racing has popped up as being quite a well-regarded racing game, to the extent that I have very nearly added it to the old collection a couple of times now, but I've just never really pulled the trigger.
I feel
however,
go on.
I do like Mega Man.
Well, this is the thing. So, and you'll probably pull a face at me. I've never played a Mega Man game before, which is incredible, really, because I think that nearly everybody's played a Mega Man game.
I mean, I've played plenty, but I'm terrible at all of them. I barely ever get anywhere. I can count on one hand the number of stages I've completed. Genuinely,
I think that I will probably play one of the Mega Man games for the PSP at some point. I think that's where I think I'll go with that. But I'm not going to suddenly go, oh, let's go PlayStation here because we haven't had a PlayStation game yet. My heart of hearts is saying Beetle Adventure Racing because we like driving games. We like arcade races, and it sounds like much like 18-wheeler pro-American trucker, my Bobby, back in Drive January. That having that fun, you can rent it over a weekend situation for a driving game. I'm happy to have Beetle Adventure Racing destroying Mega Man.
All right, let's do it. It's as good a reason as any, isn't
it? This is ridiculous. Okay, that's 5 out of 5 for the N64 so far, isn't it? And I'm sure it won't run the table, but we'll see.
I mean, there's a couple higher up that I think are going to be interesting.
It could,
so. Just looking at the list, I think it's going to get tasty.
Stick with this podcast because it will get hilarious at the end. Right, okay. So this one here, we've got Ape Escape for the PlayStation, 9.5 from IGN, so a really high score, and 1080 Snowboarding, 8.6 from IGN. We've both played. I've played the PlayStation game, and you've played the N64 game.
Yep.
I'm going to say that at this point, Ape Escape is not a perfect game. But to see... I think it was the first game I owned when I owned a PlayStation, and I got it with the analog sticks. That isn't so I got an analog controller, and it was effectively a bit of a tech demo for the analog controller. Like, is it gimmicky to be able to swing your net and swing your sword to hit the monkeys? But it's quite difficult. Like, so it's not an easy gimmicky game. And I really enjoyed Ape Escape. Like, being 11 years old when that came out, and having that analog, and never having anything like that before in my hands. So yeah, this is one that I can kind of go, I feel like whilst it's not the best game I've ever played in my entire life, at that period of time, the fun I had with that, and I have like such strong memories of getting that game and being one of my first PlayStation 1 games and playing with those analog sticks and thinking, wow, this is like the future. And lo and behold, they're still around, analog sticks. They haven't found something to replace them yet. So, and it's not just, all right, how good the controller was as an idea, but how well they did to implement that within the game and make it more than that tech demo. Like, as in, it was, and the fact that I'm super excited to hear that Ape Escape is going to be back in Metal Gear Solid Delta, like, as in, it's because Ape Escape's fucking fun. Like, as in, it just really is, and it's even more ridiculous and fun when you're Solid Snake chasing around after these monkeys. But like, it's and I genuinely want to go back and play some of the sequels. I know I played the what was it even called, Ape Escape, the arcade game that I played for the PSP. That was shit. Like, the puzzle game one, but in general, Ape Escape's great. So yeah, I'd be really happy to have that in. But what about 1080 snowboarding?
So the irony of me saying about Beetle Adventure Racing about the N64 not having many great racing games is that I've looked at the list a bit higher up and it's like, oh,
there's loads of them.
All the ones I could name are in this frigging list.
Hard.
So unfortunately for me, 1080 snowboarding is, I think, by modern standards, perhaps even for the time, you could say that it was maybe a bit light on content. However, I think it looks great. I do, and it's basically a straight-laced start at the top of the hill, go to the bottom of the hill snowboarding game. Kind of similar to Ape Escape in that it felt like a bit of a showcase for analog controls, and you felt like you had a bit of kind of like a couple of the other things on this list, where it feels like if you were going to be mean about it, you could say, oh, but it's just a glorified tech demo. Yeah, sure. And also, again, like some of the other things on this list, you could say, but the GameCube version kind of did some things a little bit better, a little bit different and all that. For me, 1080 snowboarding has a lot of nostalgia tied up in it because at one point, when I was looking at secondary schools and stuff like that, there was one nearby that my parents said about having a look at, but you needed to do an entrance exam, and I was dead set against it. And then they said they would get me 1080 snowboarding if I did the exam.
Oh.
I was like, right, I will do this exam. And I tell you what, I bloody nearly got in as well. Like, they were taking the top 90. I was 93rd. I could have appealed. All that.
Could have appealed.
And they said,
but I was
do you want to appeal? I was like, but I got 1080 snowboarding, so the job's done. I'm good.
I was playing N64, so...
I get to go to the school I wanted to go to start with, and I have 1080 snowboarding.
I don't know how to snowboard now.
I've won. I don't need to do anything else. Everything's good in the world.
Brilliant. I love that.
So, you know what? Like, you can have Ape Escape, but I will forever and a day have a soft spot for 1080 snowboarding.
Okay. I mean, I think I genuinely... You've got a better story than me as well, but I'm going to have to take that one, I think. I think it's about time the PlayStation starts taking some names. So, as far as I'm concerned, you had Cool Borders and SSX coming up on the PlayStation. Like, snowboarding...
It was all the rage.
Yeah, all the rage. Yeah,
all
exactly.
the rage.
Okay. This one will probably be quite quick, I imagine.
This is no contest at all.
Crash Team Racing at 8.5 versus WWF No Mercy.
Crash Team Racing versus 9. One of the greatest games ever made.
I mean, I don't think we need to say too much about this, really. Crash Team Racing, a very, very good kart racer.
Yep.
Brilliant. And obviously they remastered it and it was still really good again. But yeah, is it going to stand up against No Mercy?
Of course it's fucking not. No Mercy is going to stand there, puff its chest out, and take a couple of chops like a friggin' man.
Right, there we go. Right, okay, we've cut some podcast.
I will be reviewing No Mercy.
That's fine. Yeah,
quite soon.
Yeah, don't worry, we can come back to that. That's cool. Right, here we go. So. Here's one I feel pretty strongly about, and I've already had my say about this game before. In at 18, Siphon Filter, 9.5, rightly fucking so, 9.5 from IGN, versus Mario Kart 64 at 8.1. We've both played that, and I've played Siphon Filter as previously reviewed on the podcast, and I give it an 8, and then I said if you play it with analog sticks on the Vita nowadays, it's a 9. I still stand by that. If you want to know my feelings about Siphon Filter, go back and listen to that podcast. I absolutely love the series. So, unless you feel like you need to put Mario Kart 64 in there, I think I enjoyed the SNES version more than the N64 version.
This is the thing about Mario Kart, isn't it? Because there's been so many of them. Everybody's going to have that one that they really, really like. Yeah. And the N64 one is probably, for me, up there, but I don't know how much of that is nostalgia and how much of that is just because I have such fond In fact, no, it is still nostalgia. Just really fond memories.
What the difference between fond memories and nostalgia?
There is no difference in what I'm about to tell you. But I've got really fond memories of that basically shitty multiplayer map that's just the 4 forts, the 4 coloured forts, the simplest friggin' map of all time. Absolutely terrible for a vehicle-based game. But that was the map we played loads on. And I will always appreciate it. I think to go back to it now, it's kind of difficult with the graphics and the kind of weird 2D sprites and 3D background and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think later ones added their own stuff. But
is it Double Dash?
Well, no, I was never a huge fan of Double Dash.
That's interesting.
But the problem for me with this and doing this comparison is you're absolutely right. The SNES version is still great, and the SNES version came out before this. I think it's kind of unfair to compare these games to stuff that came out after them, but I think it's completely fair to compare it to stuff that came out before them.
Yeah. And
the SNES one is still great. So, yeah, I think Siphon Filter probably gets it for something that's a bit new and different.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's what you just said there about the doing something different. I still don't think anything's kind of done Siphon Filter like Siphon Filter's done it. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't. I saw when I looked at the list, I was like, when am I going to get something that I'm going to really stand up for? And that was my first one. So, okay, cool. Interestingly, here we've kind of got a bit of a weird one because we've got 17 Soul Reaver Legacy of Kain, 9.3. It's obviously just really recently had a remaster and had come out on the Evercade, etc. Neither of us have played that properly, although
I have played the demo.
Played the demo disc quite a lot.
Same with me and Siphon Filter. I played the demo. And I nearly picked up Soul Reaver and the Legacy of Kain stuff on the Evercade recently. Yeah. I'm still kind of sniffing around it, so I might get to it at some point.
I'm kind of sniffing around it, and I always have been. But, I mean, that's the second game in the Soul Reaver series and stuff, so it'll be interesting to see what the first one's like as well. I don't know. I've never been super convinced that I would enjoy it, but at the same time, whenever you read a review about it or kind of go back, or the fact they have remastered it. Shows that people really do like it. Show versus Diddy Kong Racing.
Yep.
8.4 from IGN.
More rare.
More rare. And I
actually played it.
I've not played enough of it to say that I've played it, but I'm aware that of its love, and everyone kind of says, which is the best kart racing game? Is it Diddy Kong or Mario Kart?
So to be honest with you, this is why I kind of gave Mario Kart away so easily. Because I was keeping my powder dry for Diddy Kong Racing. I really enjoyed it back in the day. Like Mario Kart was great. Mario Kart was fun. But as a sort of single-player experience, for some reason, I just gelled with Diddy Kong Racing more. And I think on balance, I probably spent more time with it. But I spent more time playing Mario Kart 64 with my friends. Yeah. So, they kind of both had their merits. But, it's classic rare. It's bright, it's colourful. Pre-sweary Conker is in it as well, if I remember rightly. So, kind of weird alternative history.
Pre-watershed Conker.
Yeah. Alternative history points there. And crucially, as far as this list is concerned, someone in the room has actually played it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, cool. Diddy Kong Racing, knocking out Soul Reaver, Legacy of Kain. Who'd have thought that would happen at some point? If this conversation's ever been had anywhere else on the face of the planet at any point,
tell us.
Please tell us. So this is a juicy one. Final Fantasy Tactics, 8.5 only, which is interesting. We've both played that. Now I'm caveating that with that I have played the PSP version, which I know is not the same, but I know of it enough through that.
Yeah.
And F-Zero X. 9.1, and you are an F-Zero bitch.
I really am. I really, really am.
But in two completely different types of game.
But there is one soundtrack playing in my head now, and it is not Final Fantasy Tactics. The soundtrack to F-Zero X is it's frigging awesome.
But is Final Fantasy Tactics not a more accomplished game?
Accomplished. Now that's an interesting word, isn't it?
Is it not the best one? Is it not the best Final Fantasy game?
That is also a pretty controversial comment.
Especially
in this household.
I'm just putting things out.
So, Final Fantasy Tactics, big, sprawling adventure, deep mechanics, lovely artwork, classic Final Fantasy tick boxes going through. Give you that. I never really gelled with it. I kind of felt more like it was an administrative exercise rather than a kind of emotive experience.
I think I'm remembering now that I said it was the game I most respected ever.
Yes, yeah.
Like a gentleman.
F-Zero X, I will occasionally just get the itch, and it's like, well, it's going to be this or it's going to be GX. Which one's going on? For me, it's the kind of inverse of the Mario Kart situation, where the SNES game is great. I would argue F-Zero X absolutely frigging destroys it. And not only that, but having gone back to the N64 a bit more recently, I can categorically tell you that to get a game to run as fast and as smooth as F-Zero X does on the N64 is a technical friggin' miracle. Okay. I swear. It's really impressive, and I tell you what, F-Zero GX was only more impressive on the GameCube. So I think as an important sort of technical stepping stone with a really good soundtrack, I would absolutely argue for F-Zero X.
It's an important turning point for our podcast. You're saying there. Look, you didn't have to argue hard with me. Do I have to pick between the game that I'm looking at and thinking, and I'm trying to use a different word, but I can't, really accomplished, that is in that you're like, wow, that's the most professional job I've ever done ever. Or the most fucking fun you'll ever have ever.
That's the thing, right? Like this is,
and I know I'm going to pick F-Zero X here.
Yeah,
but
but this is where we are going to come down to personal preference, because there will absolutely be those people where, like, Final Fantasy Tactics, same as every other game that we're reading out, like, this will be someone's favourite ever game. Like, of course it will. I can absolutely see why, and that is great.
And it's going in the gutter and being burned to death.
But for me personally, like in a toss-up between something as accomplished and nuanced as Final Fantasy Tactics versus something that is bright, fast, colourful, and rad as fuck. I know what is winning. I am a man of simple pleasures.
When you crack out the word rad, we can't go wrong.
Give me my loud colours and my awesome soundtrack, and I am a happy boy. Give me F-Zero X.
Yeah, that's fine by me. I'm totally behind that. Here's an interesting one. Medal of Honor in Underground, 9 out of 10 from IGN, and I've played that all the way through, a long time ago, mind, versus GoldenEye 007, the highest rated game so far, I believe, at 9.7, and obviously, we've both played that, because obviously everyone ever has played GoldenEye.
Where's GoldenEye?
Yeah, it's just like... but... the thing is, this is going to be a quick one, because that isn't my favourite Medal of Honor. But it's really good. But I still prefer the first one. I believe I read in the IGN's sort of small review of this was that that Manon, the main character, they were stronger than Jimmy, which you kind of get Manon because I think she does the narration of all the letters potentially, maybe in the first game. I can't remember now, but certainly you seem to get her character a bit more during those first couple of games. And there's definitely some fun things that I totally forgot about that I read about. That it was you could take photos, or you could because you're underground resistance. That is, in the Nazis don't know who you are, and they pose and they look. And I just remember that it's ridiculous. I was like, that was a great touch, but. Medal of Honor Underground wasn't my favourite PlayStation 1 Medal of Honor, but it was much of the same of the first game. There was a few more features to it, but actually I preferred the first one. I can't remember why necessarily. I haven't played either of them for a long time, but that's just a gut feel. I don't think we have to say too much about GoldenEye.
I don't think we can, really. That hasn't already been said. I mean, I think just weight of history and the place in the kind of evolution of what we're talking about, you got to give it to GoldenEye, right?
It is that is so hard to resist. GoldenEye goes in. Medal of Honor Underground. God bless you, Manon. Bye bye. So the best Final Fantasy game, not Tactics, it seems. Final Fantasy 9 is the best Final Fantasy game so far on this list at 9.2, and I have played all the way through that and robbed my friend Dougie's save at the end because I didn't have enough levels to beat the final boss. Versus Mario Party 3, the lowest rated game.
Yeah.
So why have IGN put at 14? Mario Party 3, which they give in their own review, and this is where I'm calling them out, bitches. 6.4 out of 10 they gave that, which, comparative to the rest of the scores...
I wonder if that's just because they felt they needed a Mario Party in there. And
potentially.
And they kind of thought they should go for the one that arguably might be most... what's the word? Developed?
Yeah, maybe.
Fully formed.
Santa brought Mario Party Jamboree to our house this year.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got a hot take on Mario Party. I personally love playing Mario Party, but only with other people. I cannot believe there is a single player mode. When you go on it, it's shit. It's so... It's soulless. For Mario,
it's a party for one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so soulless and it's so pointless, and it's it winds me up almost. Fair. It makes me quite angry.
I mean, I like me some Mario Party, but I only ever really played 1 and 2. Yeah. So I think, what was it on the Switch, Superstars or something like that has a couple of mini games and stuff out from back in the day. I enjoyed that for nostalgia. I never played Mario Party 3. Final Fantasy, I did play a bit of. I played more than some of the other games on this list, but as a Final Fantasy game, that's still kind of not a huge amount of the way through it. We're talking a handful of hours kind of thing. So, I mean, I'd like to think that I know enough to know when I'm onto something good, and I do want to go back and play more of it. So I don't think this is a contest, really. I think Final Fantasy 9 gets it. Yeah,
Final Fantasy 9 is my favourite Final Fantasy. That is in. I really love 7, but I really, really love 9. And I think that does everything that Final Fantasy Tactics does and 7 does, and puts it all together. So. And that's why I probably never played another Final Fantasy since, because I was just like, that is my Final Fantasy. I didn't need to go back to it again. Cool. So here we go. games we've not played before. In at 13, the original Silent Hill, 9 out of 10, versus Ogre Battle 64, Person of Lordly Caliber,
Damn right.
8.8. Do you know anything about these games, necessarily?
Yeah, so Silent Hill, again, I have played a bit of.
Okay.
Not very much of it. And
I feel like I might have played the tiniest bit on a demo at some point. But
so this is the thing, though, because the reason I didn't put it on is because I played it on the HD remake on the Xbox 360, which was panned.
Yeah, but you played a bit of something.
Yeah, but it looks and feels quite different. So I've not played the PlayStation original, which I think is a crucial thing to point out. I do have it. I've got it on my PS Vita somewhere, but I've just not played past like the opening maybe hour or
It's
so.
interesting that one's on here, but two's. We're not here to necessarily review the list, but
is 2 on the PS?
I think it. But I thought it was on the. I thought it was PS1.
We should have checked this before.
No, I should have said nothing before I brought it up. But anyway,
we're here now.
I know. I'll live.
I did kind of want to play Ogre Battle 64. I can't remember if it got released in PAL areas or not. If we're balancing out saying stupid things, but
I know nothing of this game.
Well, I mean,
I think I've read the article bit of it, and I still know nothing.
As I understand it, it's kind of broadly similar to Final Fantasy Tactics.
I was going to say it's RTS sort of RPG. I'm going to put all the R's in front of some letters,
but one of these games, has a bit more of again, kind of like GoldenEye, a bit more historical clout to it, I think. So I think Silent Hill's going to get it.
I would be more likely, if you put those two sentences / titles of games in front of me, I would play Silent Hill first, and I don't even like horror games necessarily, really. So, yeah, that's fair.
Great title, though, Ogre Battle 64.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
Lordly caliber.
Okay, so Spyro 2 at number 12, 8.8. Versus Mario Golf, of which in Mario Golf 64, neither of us have played it.
I think I rented again. I think I rented it, but whenever I think of Mario Golf, I think of the GameCube version more, just more naturally. So if
Paddy reviewed that for Toadstool, is that correct?
I picked up the Japanese version weirdly because it was that much cheaper for some reason. I never really gravitate towards the N64 version. My sister had Spyro 1 on her PlayStation back in the day, so whenever I think Spyro 1. But just based on these two.
The thing is, Spyro 2 does the thing that I was talking about with Crash before, and we'll come back to it, Crash, soon. It takes the initial game and just makes it so much more... I don't want to say adult necessarily, but just sort of like it just takes this kind
rated
of like,
R.
But do you know what I mean, like kid? This kid, almost like what feels like a kid's game, and then they just make it feel much more like a gamer's game in the second one.
Okay,
and you just, I don't know. I was so much more involved in the world in Spyro 2. Spyro 1, I remember going around and getting all the dragons and kind of thinking, oh yeah, I quite like this game and stuff. But even then, even at the age I was, which was sort of, I guess sort of been about 10, and played Spyro, when Spyro 2 came out, I just felt like a bit more of a badass. And it felt like Spyro just had a bit more about him as well, like his in characterization and stuff, and it felt like a true sequel. I know that sounds stupid because it is a true sequel, but sometimes games come out and you have the first game, the second game, and you kind of can't tell the difference. In this one, it just felt like it had more spunk. And it definitely needs to be commended for that. So, I mean, that's my part to say on that. Although, at the same time, I love golf video games. I love Mario Golf. I imagine you'd have a hell of a lot of fun on the N64 with that.
Yeah, for sure. But, that what you've said is reason enough for me to give it to Spyro anyway, but just sitting here thinking about it, like you say, there are plenty of golf games out there. Are there many Spyro-like games? Depends how you kind of cut it. But yeah, I think Spyro will take it.
Okay, cool. Spyro 2, knocking out Mario Golf in position 12. Position 11, so interesting one. I keep saying that every single one, but they are. Driver, which we've both played, 9.7. Yes, immediately. Totally agree with that as a rating. Nearly a perfect game. Versus Pokemon Puzzle League, 8.9 from IGN, of which neither of us have played.
Yeah, I think maybe is it on Switch, like online or something
yeah,
like
I think
that?
it is. I think I've
fired it up once.
I think I scooted past it maybe and just thought it's not Pokemon, so therefore.
Yeah.
But then for it to go in here at number 11 of IGN's favourite N64 games ever, above GoldenEye, it must have something about it.
But also, is that the only puzzle game on like either of these lists?
Potentially, yeah. Which is interesting. Yeah, you're right, because there will have been a lot. I don't know why we're talking about it so much.
I mean, Driver's going to win.
Why aren't we looking at Driver? So let's just pick it. Come on, let's just be not sensible. I love Driver so much. For the 15th time on the podcast, I implore anybody that has not got past the tutorial in your adulthood, go back and play Driver and get past that tutorial and enjoy the game, because it is awesome. In at 10, Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back. 8.5 versus which I've played, Star Wars Squadron, 8.8.
Rogue Squadron.
Sorry,
put some respect on that name, bitch.
That's how much I just don't care about it. Star Wars, it's just all the same. Star Wars Rogue Squadron.
This is where not where it started. That would be ridiculous. But like,
go on then. Which you could tell Rich has played.
I have, yeah, and. So this is the thing, like, it was really, really good. It was really good. And I know I said earlier on, it's kind of unfair to compare stuff to the later games. However, the GameCube version is the one that, again, always comes to mind for me. Especially when, like, it just scales up, and some of the, like, flying towards the Star Destroyer and stuff like that with all of these lasers going around. Like, it's nuts. It was mind-blowing stuff at the time, the first time you play it. Crash Bandicoot, like, I've dabbled with the first one, and it never gelled with me. I never quite got on with it. Whereas Rogue Squadron, you hop into a ship, and it's so intuitive to go around. I mean, there are bits of it that like don't look great, or it might be a little bit obtuse with what you're doing and stuff like that, or just outright tricky. But as a sort of not quite arcade experience, not quite sim. Like, it definitely scratches an itch.
I don't really have any skin in this game. I'm going to be honest. Like, as in Crash Bandicoot 3, I'd have preferred if Crash Bandicoot 3 was here. And not against Blast Corps. Like, as in, I would have fought for it a bit more. Whereas Crash Bandicoot 2, don't get me wrong, I understand it's pretty much everybody's, like, sort of, I guess, most highly rated Crash Bandicoot game. I like Crash. I like it. He's a cool guy. But am I that in love with Crash? Not particularly. Whereas I've never played Rogue Squadron, but I know from my memories of playing X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, mid-90s to late 90s Star Wars games where you're flying a battleship, or it's in my bag, baby. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd be into it. So, I'm more than happy to give it Star Wars Rogue Squadron. Sorry, Crash, you've been knocked out twice, dude. That's like, that's rough. Indicative, though. In at 9, Vagrant Story. Never played it. 9.6, though.
I think it is meant to be quite good.
Yes. Is that an RTS sort of RPG?
RPG, I think. Yeah.
That'll be why I've never played it. Versus Wave Race 64, a 9.7, which you have played.
Indeed I have. Yeah. Yep.
Third game out on the N64, I read.
And it is still fresh as a daisy. Yeah. It really is. Like, and I say that.
It's such an old man.
I know. But I'll tell you what, I played it the other day, and it still holds up. Like, the water effects, man. Unlike it's having like water in a game is one thing, right? And you can make it look reasonably good. Going from the Mega Drive as I had to something that could run Wave Race, I cannot overstate how mind-blowing that jump was.
Yeah.
To go from Sonic and Knuckles to Wave Race, and then
same time-ish,
and only Nintendo could have gone, oh hey, we could have some really cool like water effects. How do we build a full game around it, and then actually come out with something the other end that is pretty good?
Yeah.
And just still looks good, still runs good, but oh my days, like I cannot genuinely, I know I keep going on about it, but like I cannot overstate how much that was. I can't remember if it was like the first game I fired up on my N64, but it was close to.
Yeah.
And oh my God,
I'm excited listening to it now.
But it was the kind of thing that, like, even like my parents would be walking through the living room and they would stop and look and go,
like,
wow,
yeah, what is that?
Like, yeah, and that is the kind of leap we are talking about.
It's incredible, isn't it? Really, that isn't just thing. You know, I waxed lyrical about the water effects on Overboard.
It's the kind of thing that nowadays, like, you look at the jump between console generations, and it's kind of harder and harder to distinguish these things. Whereas this, like, Wave Race 64 was one of, if not the thing that highlighted just what this console could do and what this generation could do, that was so different to what come before.
We are in this territory where all these games, I bet, will be somebody's favourite game ever, and we're just about to dash Vagrant Story upon Wave Race's rocks in the sea.
Nice. Very poetic.
Well, just, you know, like, there's no way that this podcast and who we are, and if you've listened to us at any sort of extent of time, you would understand that we would be doing anything but picking Wave Race 64 at this point. Just like, you know, we just sat on the back of fast vehicles all the time, me and you, Rich.
I'm dreading the next one, though. I'm dreading the next rank.
I'm not, because this is going to be funny. Mostly because I want to see you squirm. Tekken 3 at 9.3. So this is position 8 we're at now, guys. 9.3. Both of us have played Tekken 3 versus Super Smash Bros. On the N64, which I've put that. I've never really played it because I haven't. Rich has put that he has played it. 8.5. It's not Melee.
No,
that's that.
No, it's not.
Which I'm going to start saying is probably your catchphrase now.
Yeah. Like, oh, I could play something, but it's not Smash Bros. Melee. I should probably just get rid of most of my collection except Melee. So,
and it is Tekken.
Right.
The best Tekken?
My favourite, and I choose those words carefully because I plan to review Tekken 8 at some point, and there will be some thoughts on this. Okay. I really like Tekken 3. I've got a long history with Tekken 3, and I remember sitting there, a friend of mine had it at the time, and like just mashing the pad trying to get King to do anything. Because I thought he looked awesome.
Shit, I'll tell you that for
but it's the kind of thing that, like, you know, now I can go back and go, oh, that's why none of that worked, and I can go and make him do some cool stuff.
Man with a cat's head wearing velvet.
Yeah, what's not to like? Smash Bros. Like, the reason why this is more of a difficult kind of thing for me in my head, right, is because I love Tekken 3. Smash Bros. However, feels kind of like maybe it was the start of an entire subgenre of fighting games.
That's true. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I'm sure that there will be someone on the internet who will politely or otherwise correct me.
What would you call them? I guess like brawlers?
So it's platform fighters or brawlers.
It's moved on from side-scrolling brawlers to all out.
Yeah, so it's not like a 2D plane. You're introducing more platforming elements to it, right?
Windmilling, basically.
But also, I think I would argue that for like a lot of the more modern fighting game moves to try and simplify inputs to make them more accessible, I think owe a lot to Smash Bros. As a series and the popularity of Smash Bros. And the kind of making inputs a bit more universal and making them simpler.
Yeah.
And then you have to focus on your spacing, movement, timing instead. I think.
Did you know that at the time?
No. This is the thing. At the time, it was just a really fun multiplayer game that any of us could play, whereas Tekken was a really fun multiplayer game that, like, 2 people I knew could play. Yeah. And the rest of us were just getting hammered all the time.
My shins just getting kicked constantly. Like, just constantly.
However, for me personally, between these two, there is one game that I do go back to, and it is Tekken. Mm-hmm. Like, I still, to this day, go back to Tekken 3 above a lot of the other ones. Yeah. And play that. I bought Tekken 5 to play Tekken 3 at a slightly faster frame rate in PAL regions. You have no idea how much of a ball ache it is to try and play Tekken 3 at 50 frames a second.
I mean, yeah.
But this is the kind
for a long time, but I remember loving it.
This is the kind of depth we're talking about here, and the kind of levels you can get at with that game. Smash Bros. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't have those depths. It's just that I never reached it personally.
Yeah. I think that this is the last lot of fighting games on the list. So choose wisely, Richard. Yeah. Look, I'm a massive stan for Super Smash Bros. And the series and things, but at the same time, I think it's possibly my favourite fighting game ever, Tekken 3. The one I've spent the most time with.
Yeah, and I think for me, like I know I said earlier on that comparing it to stuff that came after it feels kind of unfair, but I think in this case I kind of have to. I think that's where you break the tie. And for me, Smash Bros got surpassed with Melee and other bits and bobs. Tekken 3, I would personally, I would struggle to say that I feel like any of them really surpassed it. I think Tekken 3 is still the high point of the series for me, and I think that is what sways it.
I've ticked it. I've ticked Tekken 3. It's going. Sorry, Smash Bros. You're a real pal, but get in the ocean. Right, get in that wave race ocean. In at 7 then, Resident Evil 2, 9.3. We've both played that, versus the last game on the list I think none of us has played, which is the original Paper Mario on the N64.
There's been other Paper Marios, I think.
I've never played any Paper Mario. I would love to at some point. Like you said, there's a few kicking about out there, and they always get really highly reviewed. But I mean, should we just make this easy? And
I think we're going to have to.
I genuinely think even if we played it, I still think that it would be Resident Evil 2's probably game to lose, really, because it's just so seminal. And everyone says, the remake is, the way to play it now. Fair enough, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's still Resident Evil 2. It's still the original game, the original sort of story with tweaks around it and stuff. It's just been made easier to play, I'd say. And again, for somebody that doesn't really dabble too much in horror games, I loved being scared shitless by Resident Evil 2 when I was younger. I've played so many games that I shouldn't have played. That's probably why I don't play them now. Okay, here we go. Here we go, because this is funny for me. Tomb Raider in at number 6, 9.3. Yep. I think the earliest game on the PlayStation 1 list, versus Star Fox 64, or Lilac Wars, if you will, which Rich has reviewed for the podcast. 8.7 here from IGN. I believe that at the time you give it a heady 9 out of 10. But Tomb Raider, I played Anniversary, to be fair, and absolutely fucking loved it. But that isn't, again, same sort of argument with Resident Evil 2. It is Tomb Raider, but it isn't Tomb Raider. So I didn't say that I'd played it. You have... because you got confused with Tomb Raider 2 with it, I believe, at some point. Go on, have at it. I'm not saying I'm not going to get involved here, but you've got some feelings, locked up deep inside about Star Fox 64.
I do, and I really enjoy it. I really, really do. And there's a distinct lack of any kind of proper shoot 'em ups on this list. I think where you're in a spaceship and you're just going forward and blasting stuff.
Yeah.
So Star Fox 64 feels like kind of the closest we're going to get. Tomb Raider, again though, where we've mentioned it a couple of times now, has that kind of place of doing something a bit different, innovating a little bit, bringing something new to the party that other people have built on. Star Fox 64, I think for me, I love it. I do, but I do wonder if it's also suffering from a little bit of that Mario Kart 64 problem, where there was a version on the SNES that was actually quite good, all things considered. And I can imagine that, in fact, Star Fox 64 is another game kind of like Wave Race for me, where it was an early purchase, fired it up, and it's wow, this is what this console could do. And lest we forget, it came with the Rumble Pack. So, it's not like it was, not innovating with stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tricky one, but I can imagine that, say if you'd played the SNES Star Fox, I can imagine that was mind blowing, and seeing those shapes floating around and all that kind of stuff. And if you played Star Fox 64, it kind of looks like a prettier, more polished version of that. Whereas I can imagine Tomb Raider, you're just a bit like, oh wow, this is awesome, this is different. However, I think for me, like Tomb Raider, it wasn't only on PlayStation. Like my early Tomb Raiding experiences, I guess, were on PC.
Yeah.
And did the job perfectly well. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like in my head, I'm sitting here going, yeah, but it's a PC game though, isn't it? And I know that's wrong. I know that's not the case. So, yeah, whereas Star Fox 64, until you get into re-release territory and Switch Online and all that kind of stuff.
It's funny when you don't have a run in the race, as I don't really necessarily here. Obviously, I've listened to you for many hours now, and to hear you as effusive as you were about Lilac Wars, I feel like that takes it. I know that's damning to Tomb Raider, and there'll be a lot of people like, whoa, what are you talking about and stuff, but I mean, I feel like they're just two genuinely really, really, really good games. But it's our podcast and we can do whatever the fuck we want.
I mean, I've got the longer personal history with Star Fox.
So let's just do it. You know, that isn't, no one actually cares, so it's probably fine. Let's just do Star Fox 64. Sorry, Lara. It's like, you know, like, the thing is, if that...
She'll be fine.
I know. She'll get by.
She doesn't need this.
If that was, like, the anniversary version, I could speak on it a bit more and stuff, but it was really awesome, but I don't know, like, as in, I don't want to stand in the way of you and Star Fox 64. You know, I think your dad would be proud of you for picking that. Well done. Okay, in at number 5... Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, 9.6. Fuck yeah. I noticed that it says Faz played yes, Rich played no. Okay, yeah. Interesting.
I played it on the Game Boy Advance.
Interesting. Versus Perfect Dark, 9.8, which I think now has taken over. And it does go up from here, but it's taken over as the highest rated game so far at 9.8. And you have played Perfect Dark, another rare game.
Yeah, funny that.
Yeah. These are all just rare games or Mario games, pretty much, or Adventure Zelda games.
Just goes to show how much of a tear they were on.
Yeah, I know, ridiculous, really.
Banger after banger after banger.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I'm hoping if we're going to do some rare replay stuff, I might have a little dabble with Perfect Dark, or certainly Perfect Dark Zero as well. But I regularly say that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 is my favourite game ever. Now, since we started the podcast, this podcast has been good for lots of different things. One thing that's been really good for me is to realise what I like.
Yeah.
And what I really like is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 and how much it means to me. You cannot tell me, you can have a go, that Joanna Dark and Perfect Dark changed your life. Whereas Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 most definitely changed mine from a cultural standing point of who I am today and who I enjoy being. Most days, and the music that I enjoy as well. You can argue if you want to, and you can try and win this battle, but you've got to go through that.
Okay, all right. Watch me work. So, GoldenEye, like, obviously has a place in history, right?
All the way down in 15.
As far as my friends and I were concerned, Perfect Dark stomped the ever-loving shit out of it.
I've heard it's better than GoldenEye.
Perfect Dark, like, has a fun single player, right? But holy hell, that multiplayer at the time, like, GoldenEye was great for giving you some options and letting 4 of you go and play it. Perfect Dark let 4 of you play it, but the amount of options that you had were just mind-blowing at the time. And for kids that didn't have, like, I can imagine if you were into, like, Quake and all that kind of stuff, you might be more used to that kind of suite of multiplayer options. Perfect Dark was kind of the first stop on that journey for myself and my friends that ended up going and spending a long time in, like, Unreal Tournament and stuff like that. That was kind of where we moved on to afterwards. But Perfect Dark was the where that started. And not only that, but you could play it single player with bots in the multiplayer, so you could go and practice and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, Perfect Dark was that moment where I realised that what I really enjoy in games is playing against other people in the same space. And that brings me to the fighting games and all that kind of stuff that I still enjoy nowadays.
With your cultural change, I thought I had...
You say about changing right? The illustration, right? You asked, I'm going to tell you, so shut the fuck up a minute, right? The illustration of this was one time where my friend and I went one-on-one into a match, and we did one-hit kills with assault rifles, first to 500.
Okay.
500 kills.
I think it's like...
It was a fucking endurance test, right?
Yeah.
And I won 500 to 498. Now, you have no idea how tense that tail end of that match was. And then, like, it was insane. And that was that kind of light bulb moment of, like, oh, shit, like, being able to just, like, maintain what we're doing for that long and then just edge it out in those last couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And those last couple of kills came really, really quickly as well. But here I am, sat God knows how many years later, talking about one specific deathmatch that has just lived that long in my memory. I think there's got to be something to be said for that.
That's a fair point. Like, you're making me feel like in my stomach. Like, I remember having games of Red Faction, the same sort of thing, where you kind of 500 kills, loads of bots, and you just sort of like you're there for like you're not really even playing the game. You're like interacting with your friends around you, you're like doing this one deathmatch for 7 hours, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, this is tight.
Yeah, but that's the thing, and like because we didn't have any bots in this game either, it was literally one-on-one.
Okay,
like no farming of kills or anything like that.
The problem for me is that you said that you and your friends moved on to Unreal Tournament. For better or worse, I've never moved on from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. I've never and I genuinely mean that. That is in it is
fair. That's fair.
It is the thing that I've just never moved on from. I can't. I don't know what that sentence even means. But it means
it's a good point. It is a good point.
It means something. I mean, like look at these spreadsheets on a piece of paper in front of us. If you started like pulling the spreadsheet, you're like, no, give it to me. I'd be like, no,
this is the one.
It's a raid. Like, and yeah.
I mean, that is a compelling point. Yeah, we did move on, and like going back and playing Perfect Dark on an N64, like it does not run particularly well. So going and playing like a re-release on the Xbox 360 or whatever it was that it came out on, I think is probably nowadays the way to go and do it.
Yeah.
Or Rare Replay and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see what people reckon about the Tony Hawk Pro Skater remakes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I would argue that it still kind of stands on its own as its own thing. Yeah, all right, I'll give it to Tony Hawk. I'll give it to Tony Hawk, because you're right, we did move on, and we did graduate, as it were, to other things.
Depressingly for me.
But you're stuck in September the 19th, 2000 still.
I think I might be. I feel like my core gaming... I
mean, these are formative years we're talking about.
I think I'm stuck in the year 2000 in what I expect from a video game. And it is what Tony Hawk's 2 gave to me. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right. I grew up and I moved on.
You truly are a person of lordly caliber.
Damn right.
So, okay. How quick are we going to be about this one? I feel like probably pretty speedy in a way, funnily enough. Gran Turismo 2, 9.8. I have played through a significant chunk of Gran Turismo 2 back in the day, not for a long time, versus Banjo Kazooie at 9.6, of which you have played. So we referenced it before. We've not played Tui, but you have played Kazooie.
Yep.
I, again, will play that hopefully in the next few weeks, just have a little dabble on it. Gran Turismo 2. I'm not going to defend Gran Turismo 2. I'm not a massive Gran Turismo person, and we've spoken about this previously. But at the same time, I understand why it would be so highly rated. To see that on the PlayStation back in 1999, and to experience that, it is. it's incredible how good that every single time you skip up a generation, how they make Gran Turismo look like the best game. And even 5 years later, you go, all right, I'll just check back in Gran Turismo. You go, what? This is?
Oh, it still looks good.
Yeah, this is Gran Turismo. This is and so but at the same time, I'm not a petrol head. But it is a great game. I'm just not going to super defend it. If you want to take Banjo-Kazooie over that and you want to speak about it for a little while, you're more than welcome to. I'm happy for it to win the day, to be honest.
If we were talking about PS2 games and this was Gran Turismo 4, like, it's the only one I've really spent any kind of significant time with. But yeah, Banjo-Kazooie, like, it is probably up there for me in terms of like 3D platformers and stuff like that. It's bright, it's colourful, it's got some fun dialogue in it. It's got some fun mechanics. I definitely played, again, with Mario Kart and Diddy Kong Racing, I played much more Banjo-Kazooie than I ever did Super Mario 64, up until quite recently. So, I definitely have that kind of rare-leaning bias. So, yeah, I will absolutely take Banjo-Kazooie, and I hope you have a lovely time when you get around to playing it.
Thank you. I did watch the making of vignette that's on Rare Replay and the very first one you can unlock is Banjo-Kazooie. And, yeah, enjoyed watching it, and you could see the love they have for it. And the fact it's the first one you unlock, I almost feel like that's the one they push in front and centre to go, this is us, this is who Rare is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you don't know anything about us, play this. This is the one I was the most excited about
Tasty.
seeing. Yeah, because, again, I have no runner in this. But Castlevania Symphony of the Night, a game that you have given 10 out of 10 to, and said it was possibly the best game you've ever played. 9 out of 10, IGN gave that. And versus Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, a game you gave 10 out of 10 to, and said it's possibly one of the best games you've ever played.
Goth fight.
He got 9.9 out of 10 from IGN. Remembering we've not got that much time left in the podcast, which of these games is going to stay?
which is going to disappear forever?
Yeah, exactly. Remember, this game does not exist anymore, Rich. That's the stakes that are on this.
Yeah, that's fine. Symphony of the Night stays. Majora's Mask goes.
Whoa!
That is not a difficult decision for me in any way, shape or form.
That's incredible.
It's really not. And the kicker for that is that, like, yes, they are both great. Yes, I enjoyed my time with both of them. However, Symphony of the Night, the more I think about it, genuinely might have a fair shout at claiming the title of my favourite game of all time. At this point.
Okay.
Like, don't get me wrong, there are a couple of other ones that might also be in the mix, but like, that definitely has more of a claim to that title than Majora's Mask ever will.
Wow, cool. That's fun. I love that you were just so succinct and just took that out there, like as in surgical.
As soon as you said, I'm interested about one of them, I knew exactly which one you were going for. It's like, no, I've got an answer for that. I'm not worried about that at all.
Well, just the fact that you give them both 10 out of 10, but I knew in my heart of hearts, if you said to me, which one do I think you're going to pick, I would have thought that.
The trick is, right, that
you have a dark heart.
I gave both of them 10 out of 10. However, I own the soundtrack to one of them. And if in doubt, go with where the soundtrack is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, in at number 2, Final Fantasy VII, 9.5. We've both played that. Versus Super Mario 64, 9.8. And we've both played that too. Although I've played a significant amount, like in terms of amount of time, less. I've completed Final Fantasy VII maybe 4 or 5 times, maybe. Whereas I think I've been through Super Mario 64 once, just for posterity, the fact that I've never really played it before. At this point, you're going for. So we've got these sort of, I guess, effectively almost like a fun role playing game versus the funnest Final Fantasy has ever been as a role playing game, but still a weighty tome, if you will. Do you have any gut feeling about where you go with this?
Yeah, I do. I would give it to Final Fantasy VII, and I've been off Super Mario 64.
Okay.
And like Super Mario 64, I am not disputing the quality of the game, and I am not disputing what it brought to the party again in historical terms and proving that you could make a 3D platformer and transplanting Mario to that kind of environment. It did a great job. However, between the two, Final Fantasy VII is the one that, as I've got older, I have got a more of an appreciation of, and the kind of scope and scale of what it achieved. I have finished Super Mario 64, or at least finished it in a to the extent that I am happy to say that I, rolled credits and all that kind of stuff and got a few extra stars. Final Fantasy VII I didn't, but I can count on one hand the number of Final Fantasy VIIs I've ever finished, and it is really not many. But I think in terms of where I am now in the year 2025, as the person I am, I think Final Fantasy as a whole has just had more of an impact on me over the years. At the time, like if we were doing this list in, what's this, call it early 1997, what have you, I would probably have said Super Mario 64.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
However, now it's Final Fantasy.
It's funny, the one thing that you said that just really resonated with me there was the rolling credits on Final Fantasy VII. The fact that I have spent any sort of time with a game, like sort of over 30 hours-ish, and done it for, I think it's 4 times, and the accomplishment, the feeling of beating the final boss on Final Fantasy VII and just watching the sort of end credits, if you will, like, just the characters are so sensational, and I personally get genuinely emotional, like as in finishing Final Fantasy VII. I didn't get so emotional finishing Super Mario 64,
no, that's fair.
But at the same time, I respect. Is it the earliest game on the list? I think it is the earliest game on the entire list. So that just shows you how incredible Super Mario 64 must be, because actually where it came from and being the very first game sort of on the N64, effectively to be like, this is what we can do. The impact is sensational. But in terms of game for game, I'd say Final Fantasy VII as well.
Yeah, and I mean, Super Mario 64, that title screen where you could like pull his face around and all that kind of stuff was what kind of sold me on an N64.
Yeah.
I saw it at a friend's house kind of thing. But yeah, in terms of like longevity of impact, I guess is what I was trying to get at. I think Final Fantasy gets it.
So while Crash crashed out, Mario has also crashed out as well. So Mario had Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, Mario Party 3, Mario Golf, Paper Mario, and Super Mario and Super Smash Bros. And Super Mario 64. That probably tells you a little bit about our podcast, even though my house is ordained in Mario stuff. It's so weird, isn't it? I'm just fighting against my children at this point, basically. Finally, we're at number 1.
Yep.
Metal Gear Solid 9.8, both played, versus Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Yep.
10 out of 10 from IGN UK. Oh, sorry, I think it was like UK, this one from. And you've played that.
Yep.
I obviously have not played Ocarina of Time. That is a choice. I feel like it's a massive fucking time sink. I have watched people play Ocarina of Time. I have been around, I guess, the zeitgeist of Ocarina of Time, just from being a retro gamer, from being a gamer, being interested. I'm sick to the back teeth of hearing about the Ocarina of Time.
It almost feels like required reading, doesn't it?
Yeah, I just, even seeing the impact that it has, I understand that. But hearing like the little that gets put into like YouTubers videos and stuff when like, a secret is revealed and things like that, and you're like, it's a Zelda sound, isn't it? So yeah, I don't want that to win, but I'd rather just say that because I feel like you're going to give a good balanced argument. I clearly want Metal Gear Solid to win because it's Metal Gear Solid. That said, the I guess the flip side of that, and rather than all these nuanced arguments and things like that, you can complete Metal Gear Solid in about 4 or 5 hours and still get, that feeling of, wow, I've been on a real adventure. Like, as in every single time. You watch every cutscene, you sort of maybe, 8 or 9 hours maybe, but you can get through Metal Gear Solid with the stealth suit in an hour and a half. Like, it's been done. I've done it. It just, it's so malleable that you can do what you want with that. And what Kojima did when he sprung that upon me, and I could actually get past the fucking dock when I was when I realised what was going on. That it depends on your group of friends and whoever you are and stuff. I knew people who had N64s. I knew people who had PlayStations. We talked about Metal Gear Solid in the playground every single day. I didn't talk to them about the Ocarina of Time, really, until I was a bit older and at university, and everyone stopped fucking talking about the Ocarina of Time to me, and I was like, what are you on about? Come on. So that's my opening gambit.
So for me, it kind of, Ocarina of Time falls into a similar bracket to Perfect Dark, and a couple of the other ones we've gone here with, like, sort of big personal firsts, So, like, Ocarina of Time was the first game that I played that scared the absolute living shit out of me. Like, well, that and GoldenEye actually probably had a fair shout. But when you first kind of grow up and the town's ruined and you first run into the zombies and the kind of noises they make and the movements they make, I could not deal with it at the time.
You're looking at me and nodding at me like I have done that. I care.
Let me finish. Shut up and let me finish. Now, the point with this is that, apart from that, Metal Gear, kind of like Final Fantasy, has had the bigger lasting impact on me. Mm-hmm. And I've still never finished Ocarina of Time, whereas I have played Metal Gear Solid through to completion multiple times. So it's not actually that much of a contest for me. Metal Gear Solid easily gets it.
Oh, right, okay. Cool.
But with the big caveat that Ocarina of Time, obviously great game, obviously rightly regarded in all-time lists, and I personally have that kind of deep-seated connection with it. But I came to Metal Gear Solid that little bit later, I was that little bit older, and it just clicked.
I'm disappointed. I really wanted you to go off on me there. I thought you were going to be like, Ocarina of Time! No, that's cool. I think that in keeping with our podcast, I feel like if you put us together as a gelatinous whole, like we'd probably sway that way as a jellied formation towards Metal Gear Solid.
It's more of a lean rather than
I know that I need to be better with Zelda. I know I do. I understand that. And both Zelda games have been knocked out by Castlevania, something like Metal Gear Solid. But that makes sense for us as a duo.
If the
after
list,
2 years of being together.
if the list of games was in any other order, like many of those N64 ones would have absolutely walked it. They really, really would have. But some of those top games in the PlayStation bracket, like, it's really difficult to argue against them.
But this is the thing. It was much like the N64 that is started off like an absolute train, and then
sorry,
no, go on.
But to be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised there's no Wipeout.
Yeah,
like, I'm sure there would be a bunch of people sat there going, "Oh, but what about this?" Or what about, I'm sure they had it at the time. But genuinely, Wipeout is the one thing looking at that list where I'm like, "Oh," and there's no sports games.
Yeah,
apart from the racing, but like,
I mean, that
also feels a bit weird.
Yeah, I was going to say that at some point, to say that we weren't really trying to do.
I suppose.
But we weren't really trying to do the lists. That is in terms of know what I mean, like say, what have they got right and what have they got wrong?
Yeah, we're not critiquing the list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But at the same time, and I mean, in general, and this is something that is, I guess, thrown at IGN nowadays by all of us. But we've done it as well, and big corporations that review games and stuff like that, like, they will have money in their pockets from somebody somewhere to say, like, is in, be kind to this game, or do this or do that. Whereas I genuinely hope and believe that these lists from consoles 25 years ago, they would have nothing invested in this. Do you know what I mean? Almost, other than trying to choose the best games. If someone's still paying for Vagrant Story to get some pop, then that is the
press merchandise.
That is the long game. That is the long game. But yeah, so I'm kind of hoping these are true lists that they really felt genuine about, and I think from some of the emotions that it sort of dragged out of us as well. It was really lovely. In the end, N64, 13 games. PS1, 12.
Oh, there you go then.
So there you go. So if you're going to have a winner out of the lists, it would be the N64. I guess it's just interesting to see that, some of the games that we, quote, air quote, got rid of, you can't, the ridiculous sort of way that we've done this, it's going to happen. But, like I said, all the Zelda games and sort of Mario games, and then you kind of have a look and sort of think, well, actually, Final Fantasy, Tactics, that had a rough ride. Poor Crash. Breath the Rappy, you can fuck off, mate. Tomb Raider. So, yeah, it just shows you can't. And one thing that made me think of just then was, you can't play every game ever.
No, of course you can't.
So you're almost doing this list in your head all the time anyway. You've got
to prioritise somehow, haven't you? And I think for me, like, what this is really highlighting is how, when the PlayStation was good, it was really good. Whereas the N64 maybe, for me personally, had a bit more depth to the library.
Yeah,
I guess.
I think so.
I think a few more options when you're perusing Blockbuster or whatever.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you genuinely put that side by side in front of me and put all the games out and all the game art and everything and put it, like you say, you went to Blockbusters, I'd probably pick up more N64 games than I would PlayStation games. Now, that might just be... back in the day, I might have done the opposite, but certainly for me, I feel like, look at that now, that probably would have been the case. Cool. Wow, that was emotional and, took a lot of energy.
Took longer than I thought it would as well.
Okay, well, with that, you're like, okay, finish the podcast.
Yeah, we're done here.
Thank you so much for listening, guys, for the first 2 years and also to this podcast. So we'll speak to you real soon.
Cheers.